popped on live. We're a little bit early this evening because we needed to be, but that's fine. This is going to be recorded and we will be sharing it, and we're live both on Insta and Facebook. Modern technology, when you have 2 phones and 2 tripods. Oh, marvellous. Oh, we got Maddie. So I've got the wonderful Emma Bulbeck with me as usual. We thought it's about time we got back to our lives. And we're going to be talking about gut health. Now, anyone that knows us and knows how we work, when people come to us with a skin condition that involves inflammation of some sort, we will immediately ask about their gut health. And it's such a complex subject, really, because most people don't really know about their gut health. They don't really understand what's normal gut health and what's a problem gut health. But it will always present itself within the body, and generally with inflammation. So I'm very fortunate to work alongside my cousin Emma Bulbeck here, who you all know.
Hi.
Who not only trained as a therapist, but also now is a specialist in gut health. So the subject that we actually have pinpointed to talk about tonight is the gut was it? Oh yeah, the gut-brain axis, you know. So Emma, if you wouldn't mind sharing, you know, what is the gut-brain axis?
So the gut-brain axis is basically the communication between the brain and the gut. So there's more communication from the gut up to the brain than there is from the brain down to the gut. So you will be aware of this connection because you think when you get nervous or you get stressed, you know, you really feel it in your gut. You have that really strong, sensation. And the research into the gut-brain axis is huge now, looking into all sorts of sort of mental health disorders, mood disorders, depression, anxiety, but even things like Parkinson's, dementia, these degenerative diseases, conditions, and just really looking at that communication. How does the gut impact the brain, and how does the brain sort of impact the gut? So it's just really looking at that whole connection, and there can be lots of things that affect that, which we're going to go into and talk about today.
Yeah, no problem in the slightest. So what causes inflammation in the gut? Obviously, a lot of it's going to be diet.
There's lots of things. Stress,
but yeah.
And yeah, not just
things
diet.
That people are aware of, isn't it?
Yeah, so even stress, for example, is huge, causes huge levels of inflammation. Even not having enough sleep can cause inflammation. Even not being low in key nutrients, that would be a type of inflammation. But particularly,
what's key nutrients?
Oh, for brain health or for keeping inflammation in control. So there's lots really. Things like omega-3s are probably your go-to to keep inflammation in a healthy.
So that's oily fish.
Range, oily fish. But most of this inflammation comes from diet and lifestyle factors. For example, antibiotics, things like lots of sugar, lots of alcohol, medication. Generally, it's quite inflammatory. And basically what happens if we have high levels of inflammation is this really impacts our brain health in lots of different ways. So for example, if we've got lots of this inflammation, that can damage the gut lining, and therefore the inflammation spreads to various parts of the body. But more specifically, things like serotonin, so our feel-good, happy hormone, in order to produce that, we need to eat tryptophan, which we find in the diet.
What's tryptophan?
Things like turkey, chicken.
Oh yeah, I heard that. Turkey sandwich I once heard. If you can't sleep, but I don't eat turkey. But I heard a turkey sandwich.
Yeah, it's really good source of tryptophan. So yeah, when we have that through the diet, through various different sources, basically that then needs to be converted into serotonin, and to do that, tryptophan will either go down the serotonin pathway to make us feel good, to help our mood, to help with digestion, things like that, or it goes down something called the kynurenine pathway, to carry out lots of other different functions. But the more inflamed we are, the more that tryptophan is pushed down the kynurenine pathway rather than going down to make more serotonin. So that's just an example of how that inflammation is actually causing us to not be able to make as much serotonin, and therefore our mood will be affected. And then if we don't produce enough serotonin, which is quite common, either because we're not getting enough tryptophan through the diet, or because we're too inflamed, then for example, if you don't have enough serotonin, then you can get quite constipated.
Right.
So serotonin helps with that peristalsis, that muscle movement that moves food through the system. So often people that have depression, there's quite a high tendency to have constipation as well.
That's amazing that serotonin helps with the peristalsis motion, which is the caterpillar movement that passes your bowel through your intestine and make you have a movement.
And if you think
that's
as well,
amazing.
There's lots of reasons why that would affect your sort of mental health, but even on a basic level, if you're not actually getting rid of waste products, hormones, we detoxify a lot of hormones via the stool, and then if you're not clearing toxins, hormones, things like that, waste products through your stool, then your liver will have to compensate. So the higher our toxic burden, that would also affect our brain and our mental health. So there's
That's
so
amazing.
many different pathways and how our gut brain is sort of connected, but that's just an example of how if those sort of areas aren't working effectively, then your mental health will start to be affected.
I'm just going to push you slightly closer to the camera and the microphone. Yeah, because we're very aware that the gut has a brain. We're hearing about this more and more. Obviously, we link gut to your gut instinct. So it's fascinating that your gut actually speaks to the brain. It's amazing, isn't it?
More communication that way, yeah.
More communication. So what else? What would you class as a really balanced sort of diet, so that makes sure that people get a really healthy bowel and gut health?
More talking towards that gut brain, I would say that things like B vitamins are really important. And
B vitamins, okay.
Yeah, that's really key.
Yep.
And lots of people are low in B vitamins because things like alcohol deplete them, things like stress.
Yeah.
And ultimately we need, B vitamins in abundance in our diet. If you're having quite a balanced diet, that should be quite, easy to consume, but it's the fact that you need them, constantly.
Now, B are fat soluble, aren't they?
No, they're water
so they're
soluble.
Water soluble as well. Okay, so we do need to top them up.
We don't store them. We do store things like B12. We have, we do store that.
Do we need to have all the Bs together? Do you need to have a complex?
Yes, you do. Yeah. It depends how much you're taking.
Okay.
So things like B6 and B12 we probably need a little bit more of.
Right.
But if you were to supplement with high dose B6, B12, eventually you'd probably, lower your stores of the other important B vitamins.
Right.
So yeah, it's best to take them in a complex.
Best to take them in a complex.
But the reason that B vitamins are so important are, one, for your nervous system, they're very important for that. But also because they help us to make our neurotransmitters, which again are absolutely vital for our brain health.
Neurotransmitter, just explain that.
So they work like hormones, and they are really important for regulating mood, for emotions, for sleep, things like dopamine, serotonin, really key to our all of our well-being, but they are quite intrinsically linked to our sort of mental health. So if we're not eating enough B vitamins or absorbing them, then we won't be producing the neurotransmitters that are really important to help our mental health. So they're really important. I'd say things like omega-3 to help keep inflammation down, because as we said, we want to keep it in a nice healthy range. We don't want high levels of inflammation. No. And we definitely don't need any more inflammation. Our diet can be very inflammatory. Even having the wrong ratio of omega-6 to 3 is inflammatory, for example. And then I would say supplements are important, but maybe just looking more at like diet and lifestyle. We have something called the HPA axis,
HPA.
HPA.
Okay.
And this is basically a system which is activated when we go through periods of stress, and everyone is so stressed now that we don't have that sort of healthy stress response where we have a bit of stress and then we sort of recover from it, and then we're just constantly quite stressed with a very stressful life.
Level, isn't it?
And if you think of something like cortisol, for example, our stress hormone, all the time we're producing cortisol, our body will always favour making that rather than our sex hormones. So that's really implicated.
That's because of flight or flight, I suppose.
Exactly, yeah. So, for example, the menopause, women are struggling so much now with the menopause, because now that actually is quite a stressful sort of time in life. It's when maybe you're still sort of supporting your children are moving away from home, maybe women are still working, maybe our diet and lifestyle isn't sort of as healthy as it should be. And then on top of that, we're producing so much cortisol, our stress hormone, that actually there's less of those, sex hormones available to make vital things that we need, like estrogen, which is in decline.
Yeah.
So this, if we're constantly activating that HPA axis and we're producing lots of cortisol, our hormones then suffer as a result, which can also impact mood if we have unstable hormones. So that's another...
Well, we're going to address... And hi, Stacey. Yes, look, she's saying hi, beauties. Yes, the gut brain. It's amazing. We will address hormone health. We're going to take different hormones and different organs and address that in more detail. But it is so fascinating. People just don't make the connection with gut health and their skin. And like with us, as I said, if you come into us and you've got the worst inflammation in your skin, I wouldn't even bother to treat you until you speak to somebody like Emma. For the simple fact is, it will just be such a long road, and to get the best, your skin is clearly telling us that there's something wrong within the body. And it's all about prevention of disease later in life as well. If your gut is unhealthy and out of balance, that is where all your nutrients are absorbed into the body, and that's where you're being sort of fed, and it is so important. I mean, we're massive fans, aren't we, of fermented foods, prebiotics and probiotics.
Definitely.
Prebiotics feed the probiotics.
Yes, exactly.
Which is the healthy bacteria, because obviously the gut is full of bacteria. But we have so many things in our lives, like antibiotics. Antibiotics is in water. There's so much stuff in our water. We're both sitting here drinking distilled water, natural water, because all these things that we're being bombarded with on a regular basis is really having a massive effect upon our gut health, which is in turn going to have a massive effect upon our health.
And even animal foods,
Well,
dairy,
so full of hormones,
antibiotics and hormones. But even the soil that vegetables are grown in, and they're all, the soil is treated with antibiotics. So we're actually, even if you're not actually taking antibiotics, you're still getting antibiotics in the food that you're eating, unfortunately, unless you can eat organic. Our gut and our liver is having to process these, and also people forget that after a course of antibiotics, or if you have been having a sort of diet and lifestyle that isn't feeding and nourishing your gut bacteria, it isn't actually as easy as you think to just colonize the gut again with all of that bacteria. So you've got to really, really be careful and make sure that you are, you've got the right conditions. You're giving your body the right conditions for that bacteria to grow, because actually it's very hard to get that bacteria to sort of colonize the gut and stay in the gut, in the same way that the bacteria you have from birth as a child, the bacteria that you grow. If you suddenly take an antibiotic and completely strip that, it's not an overnight fix to suddenly restore your gut health. And I think people don't realise that, and they take multiple courses of antibiotics, and they might be on medication, which is a constant disruption of our gut flora. And then also they're probably not eating enough fibre, which is key to keeping that bacteria alive. And then, having things like alcohol, stress, even things like over-exercising can damage the gut flora. So there's just so many, different ways that we are impacting our gut health, and that's why we've chosen to talk a little bit more about sort of mental health today, or brain health, because it's a really big area at the moment. And I think for people that don't realise that there's a connection there, that most people probably don't even imagine that your diet or your gut health could even affect your brain, but actually there's that huge nerve, the vagus nerve, actually connects the two, and you can actually do things to stimulate that vagus nerve. So being in green spaces, laughing, being with people you love, even looking into like your children's eyes or your pet's eyes has been shown to stimulate that vagus nerve and help basically put us back into that parasympathetic nervous system. So not the sympathetic where we're producing cortisol when we're essentially running away from a tiger, but that parasympathetic where we're resting and digesting, and we can't heal unless we're in that parasympathetic state. So we're not digesting our food, we're not, our gut health isn't being nourished if we're in that constant sympathetic nervous system state. So things like yoga.
The parasympathetic is the nerves which are working automatically, isn't it? Without you actually, when you're sleeping as well.
Yes, exactly.
Hearing, seeing, sinuses, all sorts. Also, I heard, and it was some scientists that I listened to on the radio once, that they'd done a relationship between babies that are born by cesarean and those that are born naturally. That starts the depiction of your natural flora. So if you've been born by cesarean, you're more likely to get gut health.
100%.
Yeah.
So it depends on the mum's gut health. So the ideal situation is that you would have a natural birth and you would be breastfed, because that is the two essential main ways that you develop your gut bacteria, and when we're born, our gut and our immune system isn't fully developed, and we're relying on that from our mum to help form our gut and our immune system. It's our bacteria that do that. However, if your mum has really poor gut health, then unfortunately she's passing that on to you, and it's not even they think it's multiple generations. So it's what was your grandma's health like, because she passes that down to your mum, and then what was your mum's health like, because she passes that down to you. So it's better to still be breastfed and have a natural birth, because hopefully you do get some of the beneficial strains hopefully your mum's got. But ultimately, if your mum's got terrible gut health, say she's sort of got chronic constipation, she's got
that's gonna
the baby
lead in.
She's gonna take
People
that on.
And
that's why they get atopic things like eczema, asthma, why they might get food allergies, intolerances.
Wow.
But even some people might be fine sort of in early life, and then later on they develop things like IBS, IBD, and it really is about that composition of the gut flora. What kind of species do they have in their gut? Do they have the beneficial kind, which have loads of amazing benefits, or do they have the unhealthy, the pathogenic bacteria that have lots of unhealthy systemic effects within our bodies? So it's so important that a mum, if she's even thinking about getting pregnant, preconception nutrition is so important to get your body ready to have a baby. That's not just for the baby, it's great for the baby, but it's so important for the mum as well, to make sure that she is in good health before she has a baby. But if you're just thinking of the baby, it's so important for their life that the mum is as healthy as possible. Even your nutrient stores, if the baby needs so much when it's developing, unbelievable amount of all your key nutrients, and yes, the mum can sort of have that in a supplement, or she could sort of up her nutrient status when she actually has the baby. But all of those nutrients are very important in that early sort of forming. So like zinc, for example, is important in cell replication and cell recognition, and
so let's do a
brain health.
Let's do a live on pregnancy and nutrition then.
Definitely.
Let's do that.
Yeah, and it's just so important to do that early on, rather than get to the point where you know, a baby that has lots of like multiple health conditions, because that's so stressful.
Yeah.
And actually, if it's a nice time of reflection to look at a mum's health before she has a baby.
Yeah, good idea.
Just think actually, because otherwise, if a mum goes into pregnancy quite unhealthy, it's unlikely that will sort of improve. That will probably get worse because the baby depletes the mum massively in nutrients.
So make sure, if you want to have a baby or you're thinking about it, chat to somebody like you, because it makes a massive difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And even like, you know, the mood for mum or hormone balance, you know, so they actually enjoy that pregnancy. Because otherwise it's going to be a bit of a miserable time.
Yeah. No, that's really cool, Emma. As usual, very, very, very informative. Lots of information. As I said, we were a little bit earlier tonight, so some people probably will watch this later. But we're going to be addressing, as I said, different topics. We're going to talk about osteoporosis. We're going to talk about thyroid, menopause, pregnancy, psoriasis, eczema. We're also going to talk about fungal and yeast infections, because I hear a lot of people talking about candida. Again, another issue connected to the gut. The list goes on and on, really, but we're going to be doing a series. And phytoestrogens, again, menopause. Certain cancers come from estrogens, estrogen related. So it really is a minefield. So we're going to dissect our topics into small little segments and hopefully give you some bite-sized, really informative, great stuff. Yeah, exactly. I think people
will ask us, you know, what you would like to hear about as well.
Exactly, and like I said, tonight we've come on a bit earlier, and we know that most people are working and they don't get to see this until later. It's not a problem. But anything anybody wants us to talk about, please do. This woman knows; she knows her stuff.
And we're also working together quite closely at the moment with, you know, all of our sort of different services. So do get in touch if you'd like to work with both of us. Yeah,
definitely. As I said, what we do marries together very well. We've got to make sure. So we've got two phones here. So.
Don't know which one to look into.
So I think that's it. Thank you so much for tuning in, and for those of you that are listening later, it's amazing. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much. As always, have a lovely evening.
Thanks, everybody. Right, we've got to.
Shall I do one? You do the other.
Yeah, finish. Yes.